tuned in, of course, to WMPG. And first off, we want to thank our listeners, all of you who called in last week during our Begathon. We greatly appreciate your help helping us make some great community programming. And of course, we're the movie review show, so we've got a few movies to talk about tonight, John. What have we got?
Well, we've got Smallfoot, the animated film from Warner Brothers. We've got Hold the Dark, which is the recent Netflix film from director Jeremy Saulnier. We've got a couple quick things we're going to talk about, a film called Blaze and a film called Mandy.
And, of course, if you want to join the conversation, we're at 780-4909. That's 207-780-4909. And because we might get a caller later, we're going to start out with a family-friendly Smallfoot. Way up in the Himalayas, there's a persistent legend of a savage beast, one so terrible that a whole cloak of stones has been written about it, the abominable human. In Smallfoot, the Bigfoot legend is turned upside down with the secret village of Yeti, denying the whispered tales of the tiny pink small-footed abominable humans. Stumble over that. Migo, the son of the village gong ringer, has been intrigued by the stories, but he's more set on following the tradition of his ancestors, who launched themselves, slingshot-like, across the mountains into a huge gong, the gong ringing in the sun each day. On his very first launch, Migo misses the mark and hurls across the mountains, over the cloud barrier, face-planting in a huge snowbank. All of a sudden, he hears a buzzing, and then sees a shiny object hurtling towards him. As the object crashes, a tiny being pops out, dangling from a floating cloth-like mushroom. Oh my, is this truly one of those dreaded abominable humans? Migo races back to his village with a strange story, but is shunned, banned from the village and his family until he recants his story. Instead, he goes in search of these tiny pink beings, the Smallfoot. In the village below, Percy is attempting to create a nature video that will inform and entertain. Trouble is, nobody wants information anymore, just sensationalism. When he hears the tale of the recently spotted Yeti, he goes in search of the legend. These two are on a collision course to find something neither really thought existed. Smallfoot is rated PG for some action and humor, directed by Carrie Kirkpatrick, written by John Ricquia, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Glenn Ficarra, and stars Channing Tatum, James Corden, Zendaya, Common, LeBron James, and Danny DeVito. John, what did you think of Smallfoot?
Well, I mean, I went into this not expecting much. I mean, I really knew nothing about it, and it was barely marketed. So going in, I had no idea what to expect. I was like, man, it's probably going to be forgettable at best. And it turned out being okay. It was better than I expected, but there are definitely a lot of issues that kind of like falls into these pitfalls that kind of, with these family animated films, it falls into these little things that it can't seem to escape from. I think that just comes down to the writing, mostly. There is one intriguing element. I feel like that it's more like the message of it that I feel like carries throughout the entire thing, but everything else surrounding it, like whenever it's like the attempts at comedy, I feel like they kind of just fall flat a lot. Or maybe it's, it definitely feels like it's aiming for its target audience, which is definitely for younger kids, because the theater I was at had a couple families there, and I think the little kids were laughing at like everything. But any other kind of like sophisticated humor, there wasn't any of that there, and that's fine, because I think I think it works fine for families. They just need something like an hour and a half distraction. But other than that, it's pretty forgettable. What'd you think, Dawn?
I think I'm in the same camp. And like you, I try to see family-friendly fare during hours where families are going. So there were kids in the audience. And like you, I heard the laughter where I thought that it would fall with the children and not so much with the adults. But when I think about a couple weeks ago when we talked about The House with a Clock in Its Walls, where some kids really got scared. Things here, they didn't in the audience. And granted, it's a different audience, but the audience that I think it was intended for, the kids it worked for, as an adult, person who likes animation, it was okay animation. I mean, we've seen such heights with, of course, the umbrella of Pixar. This was a Warner product, and it's certainly okay, but currently the rich textures and motion that we've seen in other platforms wasn't there. But like you, it's a good story. It tells, question of being afraid of someone who's different than you. I think that's the theme here. And, certainly we see it in our everyday lives and we see it in the media. So having this story come about now, not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, that, and also, there's these rules that get set up and an idea that it keeps getting challenged throughout. And every time there's resistance, like, don't question it, just push it down or push that idea down. And I kind of like that idea of, like, why do we have to take everything as is? Like, shouldn't we try to expand and grow? Like, I feel like that part of the film was the strongest part. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing that kept it going. And even then later on, there's a good conflict for the main character. I'm going to try to be vague, not to give spoilers, but I feel like that works towards the latter half. I think the first half is kind of a bore. And what surprised me is like, oh, there's songs here, which I guess I should have known if Zendaya was in it, and Channing Tatum, who they both can sing. So I guess that doesn't come as a shock, I guess. But the music kind of just goes over your head.
And James Corden is quite a performer.
Yeah, true, yeah.
So, yeah, I felt the music was a little bit out of place. Wasn't expecting it, but it was okay. Again, nothing stood out that, oh my God, you need to get this single, what have you. It was okay. It told the story. I mean, you have the conflict of a being coming of age and how he deals with the life around him. So, it's a morally dubious question, his dilemma, and I think they handled it well. And I think that if families saw this together, it's a good opportunity for parents and kids to talk. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I was entertained. I'm glad I saw it on a matinee, that it wasn't a big expense to go see. I can imagine what a family would have to see this. So I see this doing well in the rental market or during the holidays if it's available on home viewing DVDs, what have you. I think that would be good. To rush out and see it, probably not so much a recommendation from my end.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising they didn't launch it closer towards winter, if it's being in like a mountain snowy setting. Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Don. This is definitely more of a rental. I think it'd be interesting. I mean, I think, for families with young children, I think they'll get there. It'll be a nice distraction, but also with a decent message too. It's definitely not the worst animated film.
No.
But there certainly have been better ones.
Yeah, so I think I always say, you can be overwhelmed, you can be underwhelmed, and I guess sometimes you can just be whelmed.
Yeah.
So if you're just tuning in to Cinema Hits and Misses, you've got John and Don here. We just got done talking about Smallfoot. We're going to move on to our next film, which is a Netflix original.
I believe so, yes. So the film's titled Hold the Dark. In a small village in the heart of Alaska, a young boy is taken by a pack of wolves. The mother, Medora Sloan, contacts writer Russell Core, who has a deep understanding of the animal. While Medora understands that her son is most likely dead, she wants Core to kill the wolf that took her child. She claims she needs something to show her husband, Vernon, who is returning home from war in the Middle East. When Vernon returns home and learns of his son's fate, it causes a violent reaction of which is fueled by vengeance. And believe me, this summary was really difficult to write.
Yeah.
So, Hold the Dark is written by Macon Blair, directed by Jeremy Saulnier, and stars Alexander Skarsgård, James Badge Dale, Jeffrey Wright, Macon Blair, and Riley
Keough. Elvis's granddaughter.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, Don, what did you think of Hold the Dark?
Wow. I have a very mixed emotion. I just saw this today, and it's resonating with me in certain aspects, and I'm a little bit mixed on this. because of the format that I saw it on a computer screen. So the richness of theater viewing, of course, gets set aside. So some of the detail and darkness in this was missing. But I was listening to it via headphones, and I think that was a richer experience. So audibly, this is a stunning film for me. The sounds that I was picking up, the soundscapes of the snow crunching and the winds and the steam kettles just kind of got to me. But if you're used to, if you've seen anything by Jerry Saulnier, you know that you've got, he excels at kind of pitting broken souls against broken bones. Mm-hmm. So there's a strong brokenness to this. But I think it was a kind of a mixed bag for me as far as the pacing and how it goes, how it morphs from one story kind of into another. What do you think, John?
I guess I went in with a few higher expectations. I mean, I had seen Saulnier's previous film, Green Room, which I liked. I didn't really love. I know a lot of people loved that film. And I think, if you've seen Green Room, that element of like hyperviolence and the effects that go with that are incredibly well done. There's no denying that. And I feel like that's where Saulnier excels the best. Unfortunately, whereas, I feel like the simple premise in Green Room is a lot easier to follow. This has a lot of ambiguity just thrown around, and it doesn't, there may be like something that gets implied later on, but the fact that I had to read something afterwards to then get clarification about something, and even then I was still not satisfied with that, with the explanation, kind of shows to me at least that like, it didn't work. It didn't convey what it was trying to say. I feel like I missed the point or I just wasn't paying attention, could because of the format, because I'm watching it on a computer screen. But this just left me kind of unimpressed.
Right. And part of me wants to go back and watch it on a bigger screen to see what did I actually miss. And, I could feel some of the parallels. We have the character Jeffrey Wright portrayed, that he's a wolf expert. He's trying to find a pack. He's trying to respond to a person who is in pain and is asking for help. And in doing that, he goes on his own journey of peril. Mm-hmm. So you see that. You see, again, we're trying to dance around spoilers here because there could be some things that we could give away here if you want to try this. And of course, this is Hold the Dark. And, there are... I think I was stricken probably most by the atmospheric of rural Alaska. Mm-hmm. How very territorial it could be, and the revenge aspects of this.
It does give like I feel like the tone and the desolation, or the isolation rather, I feel like that works really well. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking through my notes here. There's a scene, I felt like it's kind of like an action scene, or really the lead up to it feels kind of like it doesn't pace well. And I know for some reason, a lot of people threw around Wind River comparisons, which I found really odd. Like,
really?
Yeah. And I don't know if it was just because like what was being mentioned during the conversation prior, but that conversation to me just felt like exposition dump. Here's everything. Now I can do an action. And I'm like, what? I feel like it just didn't handle that well. I feel like if we're going to make a comparison to Wind River 1 builds the tension a lot better. But I mean, I'm not here to compare.
No.
It's that leading up to that scene felt a little confusing, especially with the dialogue that goes on between.
Yep. And we're getting a signal that Ryan has joined us online on the phone. Hey, Ryan, what would you like to add about Hold the Dark?
He's left speechless.
Yeah. One thing to mention, too, of course, this was based on a 2014 novel by William Giraldi. And, of course, he is the film was written by Saulnier's frequent collaborator, Macon Blair. Mm-hmm. So we see a common theme through his movies, through this. But it's interesting. You said that they were comparing this to Wind River because
I think it was only for like one particular thing. I don't think it was for its entirety.
Yeah.
But even then, I don't know. That's just things I've read online. That was because I had to just see what people were thinking of afterwards. Because again, I just kind of left myself unimpressed. It just really didn't engage with me that well. It may have been the format. It may have been the slow pacing. It felt like a lot of things were just happening, and I didn't really understand characters.
Yeah. And Ryan, are you there? There you are.
Hi.
There you are. Hey, so you had a chance to see Hold the Dark?
Yeah, I did. I found it kind of disappointing compared to the director's other work, like Green Room and Blue Ruin. It was definitely a lot slower. I heard you guys talking about its kind of similarities to Wind River, but it definitely doesn't hold up to those on that film. I think Jeffrey Wright did a good job because I've only seen him in Westworld. But yeah, it was kind of more of a disappointment. I was really excited to see the director's new work. I knew he was supposed to work on the new True Detective season, but he dropped out. So I thought this one would have been better, but kind of disappointed.
Yeah, so, given that Netflix is, as far as seeing it, we always talk about the expenditure money. I mean, I've already paid for my Netflix, so it wasn't really a net loss for me. It was just kind of a loss of time, and I think I will revisit it, but on a different platform. Like I said, I'll probably try it on a larger screen just to see if anything else holds them, because there were visual and audio elements I liked about it. Story,
Yeah, I'd probably have to go a little lower on the net loss part of it for me, unfortunately. I mean, there are so many other things I'd recommend. Go watch Maniac. That's a great show.
Yeah. And if you're just tuning in to Cinema Hits and Misses, here you've got John, Ryan, and Dawn. We just got done talking about Hold the Dark. Now, John and Ryan, you saw a movie that's kind of getting some cult traction and some staying power. Was it Mandy?
Yes, it is a film called Mandy, and unlike the other summary I wrote, this can be summed up relatively quickly. In the Pacific Northwest in 1983, a couple's life is changed forever when a cult group captures them. The results of this lead to one thing: revenge. So this film is written by Panos Cosmatos and Aaron Stewart-On. It is also directed by Panos Cosmatos and stars Nicolas Cage, Andrea Riseborough, and Linus Roach. Now, it is still in theaters, and I believe it's actually still going to be at the Nick. It's like a 9:20 showing, I believe, for next week. I watched this on my computer, kind of like Hold the Dark, and I do kind of wish I did see this in a theater, because the visuals are really the main thing of the film that are fantastic. There's a lot of use of really, almost neon colors, or, they use like fog and they'll just throw a color at it, and it's very surreal at times. I think the visuals are the strongest part. And also, if you're a fan of Nicolas Cage and how hammy he goes, he'll deliver on that aspect. And I think he delivers some really funny lines that are just, I think only Nicolas Cage can really pull off. What did you think, Ryan?
I really, really enjoyed this movie. I'd seen the trailer way back when they released it, and it is so metal. The synth score, the over-the-top mythical themes, the font of the title sequences, it's so cool. Like you mentioned, the wash of color, it's so beautiful with the blues and greens. And I feel, because with Nicolas Cage, his performances can be really hit or miss, and I think the director really was able to use his acting skills in the right way. There is a scene that's like one long take of him having this breakdown, and it's really well done. There is like a halfway point where it gets really more hectic, and definitely what John said, this cult, it has this feeling of a cult film. And even when, as you mentioned, like the times of the Nick, it's a lot closer to like nighttime or midnight where you normally watch like a cult film. I watched this on my TV, and it was really, really beautiful. And what's great is it comes out on DVD this month, and I probably will get it. It got me really excited to see the director's previous movie.
And just one thing I want to add, as much as the visuals are great, sometimes I just need a little story to my bones, or a little meat to the bones, as they would say. And this story is very simple, and there's nothing wrong with a simple story, but it feels like it elongates the pacing. Whereas, like, there's a scene where there's this dialogue that goes back and forth for 3 minutes, and there's this editing thing where it pretty much has, like, these faces mesh over each other. It goes on for, like, over 3 minutes. And I kind of started zoning out because I'm like, what can we get to the point? Is there a point, or are we just, monologuing? And it felt like monologuing. I think the back half, there's a lot of things that are interesting about it, but its story didn't really grab me as much. I guess for some reason, like based on the trailer I saw, I thought it was gonna be like a very gruesome, almost like Nicolas Cage's John Wick. Maybe not. Mm-hmm. I knew it wasn't gonna be like as action oriented. But I guess I was expecting just more to it, and I don't know.
Yeah, just to give a quick shout out. Of course, if you're tuning in here to Cinema Hits and Misses, and friend of the show Jenny, I know, has seen this. And of course, if you want to give us a call at 780-4909, 780-4909, you could be part of the conversation here with John and Ryan. So is the late shows part of? You think that's part of the draw of getting audiences out there?
I'm not really sure. I'm surprised they're able to hold on to it for this long. So, sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I was surprised because a few weeks ago, John had mentioned to me that it was playing at the Nick, and then I found out it was playing on VOD. And there was only a few showtimes, and even the week after, it was really late. It was only like 11:20, and I don't know. If they are going in with that cult feeling, it wouldn't surprise me, but maybe it's just the only showtime that they have. But I would want to try to see this in theaters just because the visuals are so cool.
Yeah, obviously I wouldn't really recommend this to everyone. I think its pacing may lose a lot of people from the get-go. Though if you're really into the visual medium part of film, then I think you might find Mandy something to latch on. There's something to latch on to there. Other than that, you might find yourself a little bored. You're like, when is Nick Cage just going to do his Nick Cage thing? So, check it out because it is on, video on demand, or you can get on iTunes, wherever you can find it. It is available to rent, and I'd say it's worth checking out for sure. And like Ryan said earlier, the score is actually the last score for composer Johan Johansson. And I think it fits the tone of the film quite well.
Oh, great. Anything else you guys want to add, or you ready to go on to a film of a different direction?
Sure, let's hear it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went a little bit more low-tech as far as movies, and I saw Blaze, which is set mostly in the 1980s. Blaze is a non-chronological biopic of a little-known folk country songwriter and singer Michael David Fuller, otherwise known as Blaze Foley. We see 3 timelines about Blaze: his volatile relationship with his love, actress Sybil Rosen, his pursuit of infamy throughout the underbelly of independent musicians, and the narrative of Sybil trying to come to terms with what happened to Blaze. Throughout the movie Blaze, we get a glimpse into the story of a mostly unsuccessful musician, not so much for lack of talent, but more of a lack of control. The movie neither apologizes for his destructive excesses, nor turns him into a bigger, nobler deal than Foley became in his short 39 years. Ben Dickey plays in this film by Ethan Hawke. He's a true musician, and he does wonders for the film's texture. This is a film that almost celebrates mediocrity. Ethan Hawke has done some interesting films recently. He did Born to be Blue, the Chet Baker story recently. He also did a stint in Juliet Naked where he was a singer. And here he partnered with Sybil Rosen to bring this story to the screen. And when you guys are talking about how kind of gritty and visual aspects that Mandy had, this would be the opposite. I mean, even though set in the 80s, this was a really depressed area in Texas. And so it doesn't show the bouffant hair or poofed shoulder pads of the 1980s. The music is raw. If you're familiar with the soundtrack for Thelma and Louise, that was Charlie Sexton who did a lot of the songs. He's in it here as one of Foley's collaborators, Townes Van Zandt. Aaliyah Shawkat and Josh Hamilton also are in the cast, as are cameos by Sam Rockwell, Riot Russell, Steve Zahn, Chris Christopherson, and Richard Linklater. Go into this movie knowing that it may take you a moment to figure out the timeline. They're not so wide in spans, but it enables Hawke to tell a story that is part truth, part emotional, and part supposition. And I think it's one that, if you're a fan of music and kind of like to see the grittier side of it, you'll like. It is being held over at the Nick this week. Like Mandy, it's got a single showing. It's got, I think, a late afternoon showing. Mm-hmm. This is one I enjoyed seeing in a theater, but would certainly do well on home viewing.
Well, you've got me interested, Don. I'll definitely have to check this out.
So, we had so many movies this week, or these past 2 weeks, we didn't want to leave our audiences kind of missing an opportunity. So that's why we gave you a few broader examples of what's out there. Mm-hmm. So, and Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Hi. Sorry. This I especially thought of you about music. This might not be your genre, but I think you'll get into the music that's in it. Because you kind of like my music guy.
Yeah, anytime I can see a movie that has to do with like music and stuff, I'm definitely down.
Yeah, so this is one that I'd recommend. So again, here on Cinema Hits and Misses, we had Smallfoot, we had Mandy, mm-hmm. we had Blaze, mm-hmm. and
Hold the Dark.
So, John, of the three that you saw, your best recommendation for this week?
That's difficult. I guess, Mandy.
All right. Ryan?
Mandy.
All right, and I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum with Blaze. And that's it for another week here on Cinema Hits and Misses. Bob is got the show tonight for Between the Notes. Tune in, listen to what he's got on deck for you. Thanks for tuning in.